Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Um, Thank you for joining, all of you. My name is Majid Mughal. I'm a pulmonologist and a cardiologist in Lansing area. Some of you guys may know us. Um, I'm joined by the STEAM panel today of four other physicians, and we will be mostly talking about COVID-19 vaccines and its efficacy, and we'll have a nice discussion in the next hour or so, and we'll take a lot of your questions, inshallah. So I will start with the introduction to the panel. We are joined by Dr. Salah Aboubakr. He is a board-certified pulmonologist, intensivist, and sleep care specialist in Lansing area. I think he moved to Lansing approximately 8 years ago now and practices at McLaren Greater Lansing Hospital and actively sees patients with COVID-19 infection, inpatient and outpatient as well. So we are glad that he is able to join us tonight. Thank you, Salah. We are also joined by Dr. Farhan Bhatti. He is a board-certified family physician and the CEO and medical director of Carefree Medical Lansing, a graduate of Michigan State University, and I think most of us know Dr. Bhatti very well locally regarding his healthcare policy and interest in Michigan and at national level. Thank you, Dr. Bhatti.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
We are also joined by Dr. Ibrahim Shah. He's a board-certified cardiologist and interventional cardiologist in Lansing area. Did his fellowship from Michigan State University and has been in Lansing, East Lansing for the last almost 16 years now, maybe more than that. And I think we are delighted to have him on the panel as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we are joined by Dr. Zakaria Sheikhaden. He's joining us from Dayton, Ohio. He's a board-certified cardiologist, Michigan State University graduate, our former fellow, and we are seeing him, virtually after many years now. So we are delighted to have him in our panel. Thank you, Zakaria.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I will start the panel discussion. We decided to have this kind of a format. So Dr. Bhatti will introduce the concept of coronavirus vaccine in English. We'll go over some of the basics, why we need the vaccine, what are the current guidelines, and what are some of the side effects. And similarly, we will go through the Arabic language, Urdu language, and Somali language for our audience briefly. And then we'll start the panel discussion regarding some of the scientific questions, and we'll take your questions within next, hopefully, 20-25 minutes, inshallah. So I'll start with Dr. Bhatti to start the English version of the introduction to the COVID-19 vaccination.
All right, wonderful. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for putting this together. So first of all, I just want to say that I will not be recommending anything that I haven't done for myself. And alhamdulillah, I've already received both doses of the Pfizer vaccine myself, and I did well, didn't really have any side effects that I can see. So I'm going to not recommend anything that I haven't done for myself. I want to first start out by talking about common questions that I get in my own practice. The biggest question that I get from my patients is it safe? And so I want to spend just 30 seconds on that. In the Pfizer clinical trials, there was 43,000 participants. And in the Moderna clinical trials, there was more than 30,000 participants. Those are right now the two vaccines that are approved in the United States. So these were actually rigorously studied. And it's true that never before in the history of medicine have we been able to put out vaccines this quickly. But that's by the grace of God, using the technology that we have at our disposal. And this was extensively studied in many people. And so the safety is quite rigorous, at least, from when it was invented up until now. And I want to talk about how it works. So first, when COVID-19 itself, when the virus comes into our body, what does it do? It goes into our cells and it causes our cells to make that DNA of the virus replicate. And then those extra copies of the virus that our body is producing attach to different parts of our bodies, particularly our lungs and our kidneys. And then those extra copies of the virus in our lungs and our kidneys cause the damage. And so what the vaccine does is it uses the same mechanism that the virus employs, but it's not actually injecting us with the virus. It's just one of the proteins that's found on the surface of the virus. So the vaccine contains the surface protein that goes into our bodies, and then it causes our bodies to replicate that protein. And then that protein is what our body forms the antibodies against. So if we're exposed to the real virus in the future, our body will recognize the surface protein on the actual virus and then fight it off. And so because mRNA is so unstable, because it lasts so little time in the body, the long-term side effects are very, like, you wouldn't expect there to be any, because it goes in, it programs the protein, and then it's done. It's no longer in your system after that. So I do not have any concerns about the long-term safety, nor have I found any rigorous scientist who does. Side effects are minimal generally: headache, a little bit of injection site pain, maybe a little bit of elevated temperature, but generally speaking, very, very well tolerated. Even people who have a history of anaphylaxis to other types of vaccines are still allowed to get this one. And one of the safety protocols in place is that when we get the vaccine, we have to sit for 30 minutes in observation to make sure that we don't have an allergic response. So that's my brief introduction. I've probably gone too long already, but my moral of the story is that, alhamdulillah, we've been given this blessing from God to have a potential cure. And as far as I know, it's completely safe and more than 95% effective.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatti, very much. I think obviously our audience will have a lot of questions, and we have plenty of time for all these questions. So, inshallah, we will take those questions as we finish the introduction. So, I will have Dr. Salah Aboubakr talk in Arabic to the Arabic-speaking audience right now tuned into our channel.
Thank you, Majid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. إن شاء الله الجميع بخير. أنا الدكتور صلاح، استشاري الأمراض الصدرية والأمراض النوم والعناية المركزة بالمنطقة. بالبداية بدي أشكر جميع الحضور لأنه أخذوا من وقتهم وحابين يعرفوا أكثر على الفيروس. هاي بداية طيبة، يعني حابين إنه يشوفوا إذا هو مناسب لهم. النقطة الثانية، مثل ما سمعتوا، إنه كل الأطباء الموجودين معنا أخذوا الفيروس أخذوا اللقاح، والحمد لله الكل بخير. اللقاح هو عبارة عن بروتين. اللقاح لا يحوي الفيروس إطلاقا ولا أي جزء من الفيروس، عبارة عن بروتين مصنع. الحقيقة أنه في شركة فايزر اللي صنعوا البروتين هو طبيب تركي مسلم وزوجته بألمانيا، الدكتور ساهين. وبيتم حقن هذا البروتين بالجسم، بيروح للخلايا وبيحرض الخلايا على إنتاج البروتين على سطح الخلية، وبعدها بيتم تشكيل الأجسام المضادة اللي هي بتشكل مناعة للجسم بحال الإصابة بالفيروس الحقيقي. السؤال دائما اللي بنسأله إنه هل الفيروس فعال؟ الشركتين الموديرنا والفايزر اللي موجودين باليو اس أكدوا الفعالية حوالي 50% بعد الجرعة الأولى، وحوالي 90 ل 95% بعد الجرعة الثانية. هل اللقاح آمن؟ طبعا مثل ما ذكرنا أنه إحنا أخذنا اللقاح والحمد لله كان الأعراض الجانبية كتير بسيطة. مثل ما ذكر الدكتور فرحان أنه الدراسة تمت على حوالي 40,000 شخص، والأعراض الجانبية كانت كتير بسيطة. لمين بنقترح انه ياخذ اللقاح؟ للاشخاص هلا حاليا اللي عمرهم اكثر من 65 سنه. احد الاسئله الثانيه، اذا كان انا اصبت بالفيروس وهلا الحمد لله شفيت، هل ممكن انه اخذ اللقاح؟ بننصح حاليا انه تستنى 90 يوم، 3 اشهر على الاقل، لانه المناعه بهالحاله من الاصابه بالفيروس بتلاست لحتى 90 يوم. آخر سؤال، وأنا سمعت كثير على السوشيال ميديا إنه هذا ممكن يأثر على التركيب الوراثي للإنسان. مثل ما ذكر الدكتور فرحان إنه عبارة عن بروتين بيدخل الخلية ما بيدخل نهائيا للنواة تبع الخلية، وبالتالي ما له علاقة بالجينات الوراثية للإنسان. بالتأكيد نحن بننصح أنه تاخذوا هالفيروس، وأكيد بنرحب بأي سؤال لكم. شكرا.
Thank you, Salah. Thank you very much. I think I will move on to Dr. Sheikhaden to talk to our Somali community.
Assalamu alaikum. So as I said earlier, in Somali, there is a different dialect, so I'm going to be speaking my mind, inshallah. الفيروس إن هو أكثر الناس يعني فيروس ولا ولين بدين كم بدين جو ولا قاعدين ولا ملايين أنتي أمر كل كدرو أنتي أو فيروس كل كيشوا كوفيد ك بدين يعني كوفيد كم كيشوا ولا كيشوا أو داود أو سدي كركا مركز جيدون هدوس كيدي سدي كوك إلى على فأمبدين جدا تقولين ملايين جيدون هو بالكستي أنتي أو كوفيد كم أنتي لكي دراحي كوفيد كمان يدرؤنا ولا هو الأوبروتين جيدا أو سدي كركاس شقية سدي دمبو هدي جيدون العلا وعسى هندوس كيدي أنتي أو إلهي سدي أو كي كالمي أو داودة أنا بهدرون الفضاء داودة تنقاذي أو فاكسين كان قاضي كان مودرنا أو كان لك سمي كان كودا قاضي كان لما عندنا ولا كترق لها إن شاء الله أنتي أنا قاضي ولاو يصير ليجا هاي تان جيدا وأنتي أو كان لك يدرو أنت تكلم ذاس إيه ولاو بدين جدا أو كون هي هاين يو والجرم فانقاذ تان جيدا إذا لمباري والأوحم ما كميك درو ساسا يرانا جيدا أنيب الحمد لله آمني أنتي أنا أو إله الداوي إله شانيو فولاو هدي فرصة أنتي هل أنتي قاعدت جيدا أنتي كفاية ستيو فبدين جدا كولين ملايين أنتي اس دي ان اي بدلو دي ان اي جيدا بدلو أنا ولا رأي يعني ولا سديجة هاي تان إن سكوالين جيدا إن شاء الله داوي إله كويتيو ولكن قرنا كيد ياين لي جيدا أنكو أبسطين فاكسينكم داو فيليو أنينا أي قفكي ويدي قاضي إيران أني بقاضي حيبا وإن شاء الله زي سؤالك اللي تقبطين وكالسنا.
Jazakallah. Thank you, Zakaria. And I will ask Dr. Ibrahim Shah to talk to our audience in Urdu, please.
Sure. बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। मैं हूँ डॉक्टर इब्राहिम शाह और मैं आप सबको खुशामदीद कहता हूँ इस वेबिनार पे आने पे। जैसा आप सब जानते हैं कि पिछले 1 साल से कोरोना वायरस ने पूरी दुनिया को अपनी लपेट में ले रखा है और इसने हमारी तर्ज ज़िंदगी को बिल्कुल मफलूज करके रख दिया है। हमारी इबादतगाहें बंद पड़ी हैं, हमारे तालीमी इदारे बंद पड़े हैं, बहुत से कारोबार नुकसान की वजह से हो चुके हैं, मुल्कों की मईशत बहरान का शिकार है और सबसे बढ़कर नाकाबिल तलाफी नुकसान इस वायरस की वजह से इंसानी जानों का ज़िया है। मगर अब अल्लाह के फजल करम से एक खुशाइंद बात यह है कि इस वायरस के खिलाफ वैक्सीन अवेलेबल हो चुकी है और 1 साल के कलील अरसे में इस वायरस के खिलाफ का वैक्सीन का अवेलेबल होना एक गैर मामूली बात है और ये सिर्फ अल्लाह ताला की मेहरबानी है। कोरोना वायरस की बीमारी ऐसे फैलती है कि जब ये इंसान के जिस्म में दाखिल होता है तो ये हमारे सेल्स को अपने जैसे मजीद वायरसेस बनाने पर मजबूर कर देता है और इस तरह ये बीमारी फैलती है। फिर हमारा जिस्म इस वायरस से लड़ता है और लड़ने के बाद एक ख़ास किस्म का मुदाफ़ियाती निज़ाम या इम्यूनिटी का सिस्टम बन जाता है जो हमारे जिस्म में मौजूद रहता है। तो यूँ समझ लीजिए कि अगर हमारा जिस्म एक वायरस को पहली दफ़ा एक्सपोज होगा तो इस वायरस के खिलाफ फ्यूचर के लिए मुस्तक़बिल के लिए एक ऐसी फौज तैयार होगी कि अगर फ्यूचर में यही वायरस हमारे जिस्म में दोबारा दाखिल होगा तो हमारे अंदर जो फौज मौजूद है, जो इम्यूनिटी है, वो इस वायरस को पहचान लेगी और इसको नाकारा बना देगी और हमें बीमारी से बचाएगी। तो इसी तरीके से जो आम तौर पे हम बाकी बीमारियां देखते हैं जैसे खसरा है या पोलियो है या चिकन पॉक्स वगैरह हैं, ये सारी बीमारियां इसी वैक्सीनेशन के ज़रिए से इनसे बचाव किया जाता है। तो वैक्सीन क्या चीज़ है? वैक्सीन असल में या तो ये वायरस बज़ाते खुद या इस वायरस का एक टुकड़ा इस तरह तैयार किया जाता है कि जब ये जिस्म में दाखिल हो जाए तो जिस्म इसको पहचान तो ले और इसके खिलाफ मुदाफ़ियाती निज़ाम तो बना ले, मगर इस वायरस में या इस टुकड़े में ऐसी सलाहियत मौजूद ना हो कि इंसान को बीमार कर सके। तो इस वक़्त जो अमेरिका में 2 वैक्सीन दस्तयाब हैं, वो एक तो मॉडर्ना की वैक्सीन है और एक फाइज़र की वैक्सीन है। ये दोनों वायरस के एक ख़ास टुकड़े से बनाई गई हैं और ये बहुत ही मौसर वैक्सीन है। इनकी एफ़िकेसी 95% तक है और आप अब हम जितने ज़्यादा लोग ये वैक्सीन लगाते जाएँगे उतना ही हम इस वायरस के फैलाव को कम करते जाएँगे और इंशाअल्लाह हम अपना तर्ज़ ज़िंदगी जल्द से जल्द दोबारा उसी तरह शुरू कर सकेंगे, जिस तरह हम 2020 से पहले गुज़ारा करते थे। ये वैक्सीन बहुत सेफ़ भी है। अगर ये सेफ़ ना होती तो मैं खुद ना लगवाता और इस पैनल पे जितने भी डॉक्टरान साहिबान हैं, ये सब भी वैक्सीनेशन लगवा चुके हैं और आपकी भी जब बारी आए वैक्सीनेशन की, तो आप भी बिला झिझक, बिला किसी हेजिटेशन के वैक्सीनेशन करवाइएगा और कोरोना वैक्सीन के खात्मे का ज़रिया बनिएगा। मैं आपकी तवज्जो का बहुत ममनून हूँ। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Jazakallah. Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you very much. So I think this has taken us close to 18 minutes. I think we're going to move on to lively discussion and take a lot of questions, hopefully. So I will start some of the questions, from the panel, that why we think that there is a big movement. I would not say a big movement, but why a subsegment of our population is questioning these vaccines. What is the basic notion behind this? And then I think we can move forward as a clinicians. We have put ourselves, in the newspapers, in the pictures, getting these vaccine. So if the healthcare are putting themselves on the front lines and getting the vaccines, why our patients are not getting the same message from us and are still skeptical about this vaccine? So I will start with any one of you who would like to think why this is happening. Is it fake news? Or people have mistrust in medicine at this time? What is the major problem right now?
So for me, I think honestly is the political environment that we're in, and the way a lot of my patients say they feel like the whole vaccine is being rushed. So they kind of lost trust in the process, even though they don't realize we came really far ahead and we perfected the way the vaccines are produced. So I honestly think it's the political environment as well as the notion that the process has been rushed and they feel like there's some mistrust with it.
I would like to.
On the other hand,
No, go ahead, doctor. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Salah. Yeah.
On the other hand, the atmosphere, the political atmosphere, put the virus as a mild flu-like syndrome. A lot of people, 99% of the people will recover, and it's not as serious as we think. So people cannot put the notion of vaccination to the side. I think thinking this will pass away and it shouldn't be a problem. So that's, I think, another point.
Dr. Bhatti?
Yeah, there's no doubt that, like Dr. Aboubakr just said, there's no doubt that the political environment made it so that people downplayed the severity of the illness and therefore didn't think that the virus was necessary. But also, I think we just live in a time where the public is sort of having an anti-intellectual bend, where instead of having debates based on facts and on merits, we're having debates based on other things, based on our biases and based on our, not us in particular, but just the general public, is bringing their own set of biases to a discussion and then debating those instead of debating things on their merits. So anti-intellectualism in society as a whole has trickled down to this discussion as well as it relates to the vaccine. I do want to say something about the research, though. It is not the case that that this vaccine or these vaccines just came out in 9 months. That's actually not true, because there have been years and years of research that's already been done on other types of coronaviruses. This is not the first coronavirus. This is, there's many other coronaviruses out there, and cell and molecular biologists and infectious disease doctors and other scientists have been doing research on these kinds of viruses for many years, and they've been looking at trying to find vaccines for these types of viruses for many years. And so it was that research that already existed in the scientific domain that allowed the COVID-19 vaccine to move so quickly. So I do want to just counter the idea this was a 9-month process. It's much longer.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think I will pose the same question to Dr. Shah. For example, Ibrahim, as physicians, when we approve a therapy or a procedure or a device, as scientists, we look at the safety of that medicine or a device or a procedure, and then the efficacy. So when I talk to my patients, these are two terms I want to keep in mind. If you're getting treatment for a cancer, you're looking at the safety of the drug as well as the efficacy. Do you have any doubts in your mind about the safety of these trials or the efficacy of these vaccines which are available to us and to our patients?
So far the data that we have available, we can only speak to that. And we have about 40,000 patients in the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine trial and about 30,000 in the Moderna. And there are actually multiple companies which are doing other researches which are going on, and we'll have more data. And since now the general public is also going to get vaccinated, obviously the CDC is going to be monitoring all these side effects very closely. So it was the Operation Warp Speed. It was a very, it's kind of something unheard of to have a vaccine available so quickly. But one thing that we need to make sure that the public knows, that none of the steps were skipped. It was actually, it proves that when we put all our resources to one thing, we can achieve great things. We can reach to the moon. We can have a vaccine within 1 year. And these trials have shown that the efficacy is 95%. It's a valid data. And the side effect profile is very safe. So I have no doubt about the current data that's available.
Great. No, thank you. Yeah, that's very nice. So I think we want to give the same message to our, our family members, our friends.
If I add something.
Yes, go ahead.
If I can add something, Majid, please. The messenger RNA technology is not new. As Dr. Farhan said, it's been out there for at least 2 decades, and they tried it, I think, with the Zika virus, with the cytomegalovirus. So it's out there. They just use it and modify it to for the coronavirus. So they use that platform that's already there, and that's helped with the speeding of the process. That's can account for the shorter time to get the corona vaccine that quick.
And I think just from the logistical point of view, I think these companies were promised that they have to start making the drug or the vaccine as they were doing phase 2 and phase 3 trials. So once the trials were positive, they already had millions of doses present. Otherwise, most of the time you have to wait for phase 3 trials to be published before a company will start making a drug. But in this case, the vaccine was already in production while they were awaiting the results of phase 3 trials. So it really tells us why the vaccine got available to us. Myself and Dr. Bhatti did a seminar for our community almost 9 months ago, and we were thinking that the vaccine may not be available till summer of 2021. So I think the questions are coming in. I think we'll take one by one. I just want to get this notion out that this messenger RNA somehow will alter our DNA. So people have this misconception. I just want one of you guys to take this question and say that this messenger RNA does not get into the nucleus of the cell. it stays outside the nucleus. It just goes to the ribosome. So scientifically, if you guys are listening and trying to understand or reading biology with your kids, it stays outside the nucleus in the cytoplasm, close to the ribosome, where it makes a spike protein, for example. And there are different subunits can be made from the ribosome. So no way that this messenger RNA or any RNA would be able to get inside the nucleus and will alter the genetic material of the human DNA, for example. So those are all fake news. If you're getting any news on WhatsApp or any other news media, disregard this, because people don't know what they're talking about when we talk about the nanoparticles and 5G antennas and really altering the DNA of a person, for example. So that's complete, I would say, nonsense. The questions I will take one by one would be just for the audience. If one of you guys, maybe Dr. Bhatti, you can start. If you start with the local reactions and the systemic reactions, what a person may feel and why some of us had a little bit worse reaction after the second dose.
Okay. So local reactions are by far the most common. So what are those? That's redness, soreness at the injection site, maybe a little bit of itching, systemic reactions like fever, fatigue, chills. That's what systemic means. And then anaphylactic reactions is like a severe allergic reaction, like, for example, the cessation of breathing. And out of the millions and millions of people around the world who have already received a COVID vaccine, I'm aware of only 10 people that actually had a severe anaphylactic reaction, and none of them died, because there's medicines called EpiPens, epinephrine, which stops a severe allergic reaction when it does happen. So by far, the most common type of side effect is just a local reaction where the needle goes.
Yeah.
What was the rest of the question?
The second question was, I think in published data, for a general public, the second dose is given with this vaccine. Like other vaccines also, we have 3 doses, for example. So a booster dose is given within 21 days for Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. So for the audience, I think the response, the local response, could be a little bit more after a second dose. But I'm telling most of my patients who are in their 60s or 70s or 80s that use of Tylenol or using Motrin is the only thing that you will need if you develop fatigue or a low-grade fever after a second booster injection, not more than this. Most of us who have received the vaccine have not taken, I think I took actually the second dose, I did take a pill of Tylenol, just 1/500, because I was feeling in fatigue. So that's the only thing that you may expect that you may need after a second dose or after a first dose, which is not something. Even your infants, when they are getting vaccine, they develop low-grade fever after getting shots, 3 shots, for example. The second question is coming in about the efficacy of these vaccines against the new variants. For example, this British variant or the South African variant, for example. So Salah or Ibrahim or Zakaria, you guys can jump in, and how we assure our audience, ourselves, that this vaccine may be effective against these new mutations.
So
we can't. I mean, we really don't. Go ahead.
Please.
Sorry, Ibrahim. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. Go.
Ibrahim, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
So
actually, we are seeing mutations in the virus, and this is a very common thing to see in viruses, to have mutation. However, that doesn't mean that the vaccine is not going to be effective against these viruses. So like the UK version or the South African version, that makes the virus more infective. It means that actually the virus is more sticky. It can go and infect more people. However, it doesn't make the virus more virulent. And to give an example, like the polio vaccine, we have had this for many, many years now. and there have been mutations in the virus, but the same vaccine is effective. The same thing with measles vaccine. So at this point in time, the data that we have available with all these variants, this vaccination should work against those variants as well.
Yeah, thank you. Salah, you have something to say? Dr. Aboubakr, you have something to say?
Yes, sir. The mutation in the British, it's the B117. Again, really, the company said they have no reason to believe that the vaccine will not work, but they gonna run more study to be fair. So this is not yet studied on the new mutation if the vaccine is as effective as in the actual, the coronavirus, without any mutation. So that's from Moderna at least.
Yeah, I mean, I want to chime in here too. Well, none of us can say with 100% certainty, but we can say with still a pretty high degree of certainty that the variants will respond to the vaccine because it's still a COVID-19, even though it's a variant. And so the surface proteins are still the surface proteins, and the mechanism, the way that the vaccine works, is that it creates a surface protein, which is on the surface of that virus, so that our immune system, if we're exposed, can recognize the virus and fight it off. And there's no reason right now to believe that any of these variants of the COVID-19 don't have that surface protein that the vaccine is targeting.
Got it. No, you're absolutely right. I think, but scientifically, so the change in the amino acid sequence, for example, as we know, the influenza virus goes through the antigenic shift and drift, and we have to tailor the vaccines every few years for the efficacy. So I think these are valid questions from the scientific community. Right now, this British mutation, as Dr. Aboubakr mentioned, has gone through 8 amino acid mutations out of 100. But the 92 amino acids are very similar to the previous, Wuhan, for example, strain. So it is possible, very much possible, and that's what I read from the BioNTech and Pfizer, that they ran the test recently, it got published, and the new vaccine seems to be effective. So what we are looking at for the audience, we are looking at the neutralizing antibodies. The term we use is what is the titer of the antibody in somebody's blood. And if those antibodies numbers are really high, then the person is really immune in a way that the infection would not cause serious trouble. I think the very important question we have in our mind is that, Zakaria, you can take this question, that getting the COVID-19 vaccine does not eliminate all the standard operating procedures for social distancing and wearing the mask. Would you like to elaborate on this a little bit for our audience?
Yeah, I think because of the vaccine, it's at least when you first receive it, you are somewhat immunocompromised, and there's always a risk. It's been shown in some cases that the first 10 days after receiving the vaccine, that there is obviously a risk for you to contract the virus itself. So for that reason, you still have to take the precautions, social distancing, wearing the mask, and then all of that. So I do agree that getting the vaccine, it doesn't give you the shield that you think in the long run it will, but in the short term, there's still gotta practice the precautions until everybody's vaccinated, and then we have more of a herd immunity at that time.
Got it. I think, yeah, I think the point is that getting the vaccine and getting the antibodies at this point is not preventing us from getting infected. We still get infected, and our nasopharynx could still have the COVID-19 virus, and we can still transmit it to the other person who has received the vaccine or may not have received the vaccine. So we could still be a carrier in a way, like if you guys know the term carrier. So if somebody is asymptomatic and really can transmit the infection, even they are vaccinated. So at this point, we have some patients, are my family members or my friends, who will say, why I have to wear the mask? I got the vaccine. So we still have to try to tell them that we still can transmit the infection without knowing that we are really infected with this virus. So wearing the mask still would be required. As you said, Zakaria, until like 70% of the population is vaccinated, and then I think we'll be in different boat at that time. Anybody else have to say a few things, about the infection and the asymptomatic, because that's really not an easy point, even for the scientific community to swallow, that if you are getting the vaccination, why you still can transmit infection.
Sure.
Go ahead, Dr. Shah.
Sure. So, Majid, as you were just saying about the transmission, so when we use the mask, yes, we do get a benefit for ourselves, but actually majority of the benefit of mask is that I'm not going to transmit my infection to somebody else. So the vaccine, although gives me the immunity that my body can fight against this virus, but it doesn't give me the ability that it's not going to infect me. So if I am infected and I can fight the vaccine, but I still have the ability to transmit it to others. So since majority of the public are not vaccinated yet, and as Zakaria mentioned, that until the herd immunity is there, or substantial amount of population is vaccinated, we still have to do the social distancing and the precautions, as well as the hygiene and the masks are still going to be there.
Go ahead, Dr. Bhatti. Thank you.
Yeah, the 95% effectiveness that we're talking about is 95% effectiveness of preventing serious outcomes, including death. So just like the flu vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting the flu. The flu vaccine decreases the likelihood that if you get the flu, you won't get severely sick. Maybe you'll only get a slight runny nose or some congestion, etc. So that's kind of what this is. So it's not that the vaccine is preventing you from getting it. The vaccine is preventing you from getting seriously ill if you get it. And so the transmission is still there until enough of the population gets the vaccine, and then the virus is not replicating in so many people, and then eventually, slowly, it will taper off once we get enough people vaccinated. But even a vaccinated person like myself, if I'm exposed to it, I could still get a runny nose, and maybe that's actually from the COVID-19 and I don't know it. So if I'm not wearing my mask, I could still spread it to someone else.
Right. Well said. Yeah, thank you. I think one of the questions coming in is more, I think we can take to the panel. If one has taken only one shot of Pfizer vaccine or Moderna vaccine, and somehow the second dose is not available, I hope that's not the scenario, but if someone is traveling or someone is getting sick, there could be multiple scenarios. Can you guys tell us, from the knowledge of the both Moderna and BioNTech studies, that what are the antibody titers even after the first dose?
So
go ahead.
In the clinical trials, it was about 65, 67% protection after one dose, and then 95% protection after two. So even if the entire population got one dose, we would still have a significant improvement in deaths and in transmissions. So, inshallah, the manufacturing process will keep up with the demand, and we won't run into a situation where somebody gets a first and isn't able to get a second dose, because the studies did not include what happens long term. Like if you get the first dose and instead of getting it 3 weeks later with Pfizer, you actually aren't able to get it until 6 weeks. The studies didn't look at that. So hopefully we'll be able to get it on the schedule that was studied. But even if a person only gets one dose, they still have some protection.
All righty. Any other additions to this point? I think that's what the data is supporting at this point. And I will just add this, that, for example, some of the other pharmaceutical companies like AstraZeneca Oxford, they are really studying one shot for the vast majority of their population. But they have done the low dose and standard dose. So there's still a lot of other companies which are looking into, because if you're looking at population of 7 billion, we need, millions, billions of doses of these vaccines. So we're not talking about USA only, we're talking about some Middle Eastern countries and our back home countries, how population will be mostly vaccinated. And most likely they will be vaccinated most likely with one shot, which is more doable in some of those third world countries. The next question is coming in along the lines of the indications. Do you recommend my 16-year-old child getting this vaccine when it is available to us? So question is 16-year-old, it's right at the borderline. Go ahead, Ibrahim.
So yeah, actually the studies, they were for 16-year-old and above. Moderna is actually currently running a trial for children 14 years to 17 years. But actually the trials that are done, they were for 16-year-olds. So if it is a 16-year-old and it is their turn, I would recommend to get the vaccine.
Good. So right now, I think from the Ingham County, our CDC plan, if I say the rollout has been, and I think Dr. Bhatti can speak more on this, the CDC has phases for population getting the vaccination. The first phase is phase 1A, then it goes to 1B, and then 1C. And I think 16-year-old really come in that 1C plan, really down the list at this point. The population, American population, has to go through 1A and 1B, which is almost, majority of more than 2/3 of our population, I would say. And then 16 or older to age 16 to 64 will come into a play without any pre-existing conditions, for example. So, but a 16-year-old has pre-existing condition that may change. So, for example, a 16-year-old with severe bronchial asthma, which is a high risk of complication from COVID-19, that's completely different than 16-year-old with no history of pulmonary disease. The next question I will take, most of these studies were done in patients who have been younger. Almost 1/3 in Pfizer and Moderna were age 65 plus. But they excluded patients with autoimmune diseases, for example, with severe allergic reactions to different agents with medications. What is our idea about really recommending vaccine? If somebody, it's very easy to say that you have underlying immunosuppressive if they are taking steroids and other drugs, but patients who have allergic reactions to previous vaccines, for example, to influenza vaccine, or to pertussis vaccine, or to shingles vaccine, what is our message to them at this point?
The message to them is to still get it cautiously. My wife is one of the rare individuals who, when she was a child, had a severe allergic reaction to a vaccine. And she's a physician, and she just got her Moderna vaccine a couple of weeks ago for COVID-19. So it's not the case that you get the vaccine and you walk out the door. They keep you in observation for at least a half an hour to make sure that you're not developing an anaphylactic reaction. And if you are, they have EpiPens available to stop the anaphylactic reaction if it does happen. And this protocol is going to be in place across the country for anybody that gets it. It's still the case that even if you have a history of a severe anaphylactic reaction, which is exceedingly rare, but if you're one of those few people that have that, you can still get the vaccine.
Good.
So yeah, I definitely agree with Farhan that if you have the fear of an allergic reaction or anaphylaxis, you certainly need to get the vaccine. However, if you have had a serious allergic reaction to another vaccine, then you need to talk to your doctor so that they can look at the ingredients of the vaccine that you are allergic to and see the vaccine that you're going to be getting, either Moderna or Pfizer, which are the two which are available at this point in time, and see if there is any common ingredient that could have been the cause of the severe allergic reaction. So if you have had that kind of ingredient, then your doctor can tell you whether you should be getting that vaccination or not. So similarly, if you suppose you never had any severe allergic reaction and you got your first dose, and God forbid you're one of those very rare birds that had the severe allergic reaction, then you're not supposed to get the second dose. You should not be getting the second dose. However, the mild side effects that we were mentioning earlier, the slight fever, the joint ache, the muscle ache, the fatigue, all of those are not allergic reactions that should discourage us from getting the second dose.
Salah, you have to say anything?
Majid, yeah, I can add that so far we have 11 cases of allergic reaction per million. So each million we have 11 cases reported. 85 of those were severe reaction. But when they look at those, these patients already have a reaction, allergic reaction to medication or food, as Dr. Farhan said, or other reaction already. 35 of those reaction were anaphylactic reaction. So what I would say in this case, we're gonna do the risk-benefit ratio here, and if see the patient will benefit from the vaccine more, the risk of getting anaphylactic reaction, of course, depends on the underlying medical history and all that. But so far, it sounds to me it's a rare cases of reaction. And as Dr. Farhan said, they monitor you after getting the first dose for at least 15 to 30 minutes. Bear in mind, it does have in the vaccine, it have polyethylene glycol, and you could be allergic to that component, not the vaccine itself, as Dr. Shah said. So if you can dissect that and see if you have any previous reaction, they share the same component, you can look into that area too. So,
right. Okay. Thank you very much. So I think the summary of that question is that be cautious, talk to your doctor, and be vigilant. But it should not prohibit us unless you had. When we are using this term anaphylactic reaction, and I think people who have anaphylactic reaction, they know this term and have the EpiPen with them. So it is not a new term for them that a bee sting or any other agents, peanuts, for example, can lead to anaphylactic reaction. So the next question is a common question that if someone had very mild symptoms in the past 2 weeks and they did not get tested for COVID-19, can they schedule themselves for the vaccination within those 2 weeks? Should they take the vaccine or they should wait? I don't think so. They have to wait 3 months. But what is the time frame if somebody had some upper respiratory tract infection symptoms and they are scheduled to take the vaccine? Zakaria, I can start with you. You can take this question there.
So this is a tough question, right? So I think a lot of time is kind of hinting at, they might have a COVID, and obviously the recommendation is if you've been tested and you tested positive for COVID, then you should wait for 3 months. But if somebody had, at least for myself, if I put myself in this situation, mild symptoms, and I have opportunity to get the vaccine, I will do it myself. So that would be my answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Any discussion on this question? Because we are
the
not
idea
checking,
to wait 3 months is that,
because we are not checking everybody, and before getting the COVID-19 vaccine. And I think for the general public, majority of the COVID-19 infections are asymptomatic. So a lot of us will get the vaccine within that 3 months period or 2 months period without knowing that we had contracted the. But I think the answer is that one should get the vaccine definitely, even they had the COVID-19 infection. And I will start the panel discussion that what is the scientific reason behind this, that once you had the infection, you have a good antibody titers, and CDC still recommends to receive the vaccine. So Salah, you can take that question, why this is so.
The idea you will have your own immune from getting infected with the virus, and supposedly the antibody you have will last around 3 to 4 months, and so they want to give a priority to other patients since you are protected during this period. If somebody know he is infected and he's positive and he has a test, I do recommend waiting 3 months, definitely. But if you're not sure and you have mild system, I think you can go ahead and take the vaccine if that's available. But the own immunity, it's reported to last around 3 to 4 months. And that's the reason the CDC recommend waiting 90 days.
So where is our, I know this is not the right discussion probably for the long-term immunity. So what should we tell ourselves or our patients that COVID-19 vaccination will protect us for how long? Can we give them some data, what has been published? Dr. Bhatti, you can take that.
No, we can't. We don't know how long it's going to protect us. We don't know if it's going to be like the tetanus shot where we have to get a booster every 10 years, or if it's going to be like the flu shot where we have to get it annually, or most likely it's going to be somewhere in between where the immunity will last for some extended period of time, but then most likely we're going to require a booster. So this is probably something that, well, certainly I'm expecting this to be something that, for the remainder of my adult life, I'm going to have to get boosters for this, just like I have to get a booster for a tetanus shot. But that data, of course, we don't know. We don't have that because the virus hasn't been around that long. So there is no long-term data on how long does the immunity last from the vaccine. So that will be a work in progress that scientists will continue to study. For the people that have been vaccinated, they will continue to test them, and then they will analyze the data and report their findings for when they think we need to get a booster.
Good.
And just quickly on the previous question, I want to understand that it is not harmful to get the COVID vaccine if you have a recent COVID infection. It's just, if there's a limited supply of vaccines, if there's a limited supply of vaccines, somebody who hasn't had the COVID-19 infection, they would be better served by you allowing them to get the vaccine first because you've already had the infection and therefore you have some immunity already. But if you had a recent infection and you didn't know it and then you got the COVID vaccine, that's not harmful in any way. I want to underscore that.
Thank you. Thanks for. So Ibrahim, next question is coming in regarding patients who have been diagnosed with diabetes and hypertension. Are there any special precautions one should take? I think the question hopefully is regarding COVID-19 vaccination. You can talk about the risk category for these patients.
Sure. So diabetes in particular, these patients are high risk for COVID-19, and if they do contract COVID-19, they can have serious consequences, and that's why these patients have been prioritized. And so, in our 1B category, they are going to be, is it 1B or 1A category, that they are going to be getting the
1B category.
Category, they will be getting the vaccination for that reason. However, they don't need to worry about any special side effects more than the general public from the vaccination.
But I think, the benefit would be the most for the higher risk, population. That's why they are getting the precedence on patients who don't have comorbid conditions. And as Ibrahim said, diabetes, especially, and hypertension also, and obesity, we are seeing these three as a very common risk for complicated COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations and ICU admissions. I will take next few questions very quickly. I will answer one of them that if somebody is allergic to penicillin, there's no interaction between penicillin and COVID-19 vaccination. These are different compounds. So that's a no. I think the next is a very important question, that public schools are going to open soon. How safe do you think that to the families who are still skeptical about the vaccination and don't like to take it? So from the maybe from the public policy perspective, Farhan, you can go ahead, take this.
Sure, thank you. As much as we are doing our best in public health to convince people about the safety of the vaccine, and how mRNA works and how there's 0.0% chance that the mRNA can actually change a person's DNA because mRNA is not stable. It's very unstable, so it can't make it to the nucleus. As much as we're trying to educate people, there will still be some people that choose not to get the vaccine, even though they physically could. And we can't force them. We live in a free society. It will delay the time that it takes to get to herd immunity, but we can't force them. As far as public policy for schools in particular, we are in the process now, and many states have already bumped teachers up to the front of the line. So along with the age 65 and over crowd, teachers and school support staff are at the front of the line for people who will be able to get the vaccine. And that's to expedite the process of getting kids back in school so that if the school principal and the teachers and support staff, if they all get the vaccine between now and March 1st, which is the target date here in Michigan, then that would allow us some more confidence that we would be able to reopen schools safely, particularly elementary schools, because what the data shows is that children ages 0 to 10 are half as likely to contract COVID as children older than age 10. In fact, children older than age 10 contracted at rates similar to adults. So elementary schools in particular, we ought to be able to open by March 1st if we get enough teachers and principals and support staff to get the vaccine. And, there will still be some teachers, I'm sure, that opt not to get it. But if enough of them get it, then we can have some confidence. The risk is not going to be zero, but when you're weighing the risks and benefits between kids getting a substandard education virtually online at home versus being protected against COVID, if we're able to ensure that at least the protection will be large enough that it outweighs the potential, it outweighs the fact that kids are learning virtually at home and they're not really getting a high quality education in most cases, then that's a public policy decision that will be made at that time. So I'm confident that at least in the Lansing School District, I'm on the Lansing School Board, that enough of our teachers and support staff will get the vaccine to allow us to open schools safely. And the governor's target here in Michigan is March 1st to get the schools back open.
Right. No, thank you. And I think it's important for teachers to take the vaccine because they are like a front really worker in a way, because they would be exposed to a lot of asymptomatic children in a way that the kids may not show the signs or symptoms of infection and can be a good carrier of infection. So I think, in my view, teachers like physicians and firefighters and police and postal workers should be getting this vaccine. And I think we, as a 5 physician group, we have in front of every teacher here, for example, now, and we are breathing and living, and we don't have 5G antennas, and we are doing very well without any major problems. So I think the one more question we'll take here: kids under 18 won't get it, but the question is, will they get it when they are above 18 or not in future? I think we have answered this question, but we can answer this again, that if you look at the CDC plan, it clearly states 1C, which is the age 16 to 64 without any pre-existing conditions. And those subgroup is included in getting the vaccination. So kids will be included from age 16. As Dr. Shah pointed out, we need some more data about the younger population, age 13 to 17, but age 18 and higher, I do not see any problems between adult and age 18. So they are in the CDC plan to receive the vaccination.
And those studies are ongoing. So it's quite possible that within 3 or 4 months, we'll have very robust data about the efficacy of this vaccine in kids younger than even age 16. And so they're going to continue to study this vaccine, in adolescence, and then extrapolate from there. As time moves on and as more data comes out, then we'll have a better idea about how low the age will be before kids can start getting or how old kids have to be rather in order to start to be able to get the vaccine.
Yeah. So that's the last question. Any other panel discussions for our audience? Zakaria, you want to say to our Somali community, or in your family or your friends, if there is a skepticism, hopefully we have answered some of their questions.
So I think what I would say is, as Muslims, we always taught, that we need to do our, khad bil asbab, taking our precautions, doing our part, and that's the sunnah of the Prophet, that we do our part in any situation. So I think this is one of the aspects that Allah gave us, that we have this opportunity to be blessed and to be able to get vaccines. So this is part of our precautions, and then practicing our sunnah and doing our part. I don't think in any way that we can convince anybody that already feels that they cannot trust the process. But at the end of the day, we have to do our part and then feel like we are contributing to the society and living as a true Muslims and following the footsteps of our Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
May I
Go ahead, yeah.
just sort of as a closing comment to piggyback off of that. Our religion teaches us that our Creator did not create any disease for which He did not also have a cure, and we firmly believe that even if the cure of a particular disease has not been invented, that our faith teaches us that there is a cure for every ailment, and so we hope and pray and have a high degree of confidence and expectation that this is the cure in front of us for this pandemic. Again, just like Dr. Sheikhaden said, we can't force anybody to do it, but we can talk very confidently about the data and how the vaccine progressed, and to underscore once more that this vaccine was not invented from scratch in 9 months, that this vaccine was many years of research and investigation in the making. These types of vaccines have been around, or the idea of creating an mRNA vaccine has been something that's been studied extensively over the course of many years, and they were finally able to successfully develop an mRNA vaccine for this particular virus. But many, many millions of dollars went into this type of research over the past many years. And part of the accelerated timeline was the unprecedented level of investment from the federal government and governments around the world to make this happen. They put so much money into ramping this up and getting the production up to scale. And that's really the reason why we were able to take the knowledge we already had about mRNA and about viruses and then translate it into a vaccine this quickly. It's not because it's not safe. And I really want to emphasize that once more.
No, thank you. Ibrahim, you want to say a few things?
No, I actually echo all of these and just wanted to underscore that, yes, this is a very safe vaccine. The efficacy of 95% of a vaccine, that is unheard of. I mean, flu vaccination, we do quite often, and the efficacy of those is usually 50 to 60%. Having an efficacy of 95%, this is God sent, alhamdulillah, for this. And we should do our part. And as an example, all of us are vaccinated, and alhamdulillah, we haven't had any bad reactions. And we hope the best for everybody as well.
Dr. Aboubakr?
As you know, I'm a lung physician, and I've been rounding on these patients since the beginning of the pandemic in March. And we really, I think last week or the week before, we had around 34 positive sick patients. These patients, when I show you, they get really sick. We lost many of them. And I really cannot just say the old one or the one with the comorbid. We have some young ones in their 40s, and they didn't do well. And some of the ones who did well, of course, these patients are admitted to the hospital, so are on the sicker side. Even some of them left with a trach, some of them left with some disability, if you will. So it is not a flu disease, it's more serious. And I think if we can prevent it with the vaccine, definitely, strongly, we recommend it. I concur with the other physician, definitely, about the safety.
All right. Jazakumullah khair. This was very nice. Thanks for giving us the time. I think we have really talked, data and science and practicality at the same time. So I'm glad we're talking about vaccine in January of 2021. This was something that in a pandemic, really unprecedented, has been pointed out multiple times. So hopefully it would be available without any major hurdles to all of us, who really need it, and will benefit from this. But hopefully we answered most of the questions which we have received, and I really appreciate everybody. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Alaikum salam.